Chapter 52, Risa. Before we begin our session, I feel it's important to remind you that although you've developed a friendship with the so-called Akron AWOL, it's in your best interest to disassociate yourself from him. The first thing they did was to separate the three of them. Divide and conquer, isn't that the term? Risa has no problem being separated from Roland, but seeing what they did to Connor makes her long to see him even more. Physically, he was not harmed in any way. It would not do to damage the merchandise. Psychologically, however, that's a different story. They paraded him through the grounds for nearly 20 minutes. Then they took off his shackles and just left him there by the flagpole. No trip to the Welcome Center, no orientation, nothing. He was left to figure out everything for himself. Risa knew the point wasn't to challenge him or even to punish him. It was to give him every opportunity to do the wrong thing. That way they could justify any punishment they gave. It had worried Risa, but only for a moment because she knows Connor all too well. He will only do the wrong thing when it's the right thing to do. It looks like you did very well on the aptitude test, Risa. Above average, actually. Good for you. After being there for half a day, Risa is still shell-shocked by the general appearance of Happy Jack Harvest Camp. In her mind's eye, she always pictured harvest camps as human cattle stockades, dead-eyed crowds of malnourished kids in small gray cells, a nightmare of dehumanization. Yet somehow this picturesque nightmare is worse. Just as the airplane graveyard was heaven disguised as hell, harvest camp is hell masquerading as heaven. You seem to be in good physical condition. You've been getting a lot of exercise, yes? Running, perhaps? Exercise seems to be a principal component of the Unwind's day. At first, she assumed the various activities were designed to keep the Unwinds occupied until their number came up. Then, as she passed a basketball game on the way to the Welcome Center, she noticed a totem pole by the court. In the eyes of each of the 5 totems were cameras. 10 players, 10 cameras. It meant that someone somewhere was studying each of the Unwinds in that game, taking notes on eye-hand coordination, gauging the strengths of various muscle groups. Risa had quickly realized that the basketball game wasn't to keep the Unwinds entertained, but to help put a cash value on their parts. Over the next few weeks, you'll be involved in a program of diverse activities. Risa, dear, are you listening? Is any of this going over your head? Would you like me to slow down? The harvest counselor who interviews her seems to assume that in spite of aptitude scores, every Unwind must be an imbecile. The woman wears a floral print blouse with lots of leaves and pink flowers. Risa would like to attack her with a weed whacker. Do you have any questions or concerns, dear? If you do, there's no better time to ask. What happens to the bad parts? The question seems to throw the woman off stride. Excuse me? You know, the bad parts. What do you do with the club feet and the deaf ears? Do you use those in transplants? You don't have either of those, do you? No, but I do have an appendix. What happens to that? Well, says the counselor with near infinite patience, a deaf ear is better than no ear at all, and sometimes that's all people can afford. And as for your appendix, nobody really needs that anyway. Then, aren't you breaking the law? Doesn't the law specify that you have to keep 100% of an Unwind alive? The smile has begun to fade from the counselor's face. Well, actually, it's 99.44%, which takes into account things like the appendix. I see. Our next bit of business is your pre-admission questionnaire. Due to your unorthodox arrival, you never had the opportunity to fill one out. She flips through the pages of the questionnaire. Most of the questions don't matter at this point, but if you have any special skills you'd like us to know about, you know, things that could be of use to the community during your stay here. Risa wishes she could just get up and leave. Even now, at the end of her life, she still has to face the inevitable question, what good are you? I have some medical experience, Risa tells her flatly. First aid, CPR. The woman smiles apologetically. Well, if there's one thing we have too many of here, it's medical staff. If the woman says, well, one more time, Risa may just drop her down a nice deep one. Anything else? I helped in the infant nursery back at Steho. Again, that slim smile. Sorry, no babies here. Is that all? Risa sighs. I also studied classical piano. The woman's eyebrows raise about an inch. Really? You play piano? Well, well, well!